that trying to make those shots that are now more difficult to make, it's what keeps you going back for more. Moving on to what I want to do into this next season, I want to kind of carry on what I did in 2022. I do have another bow coming that should be ready this year. The Bear Montana, I have a shorter draw length. I've tried to make it longer. When I do get longer, it's just harder for me to turn my neck that far, and it's very uncomfortable. It's not natural. So I'm going to shoot with as good a form as I can. And so having a shorter draw length, you lose a lot of energy with the bow. And I wanted a bow that had a little bit more efficiency than the Bear Montana moving forward.
I'm sorry,
So,
I'm just trying to picture a T-Rex shooting
yeah,
bow.
it's I wanted to get a little bit more speed because I realized just how inefficient that bow is, especially with a shorter draw, and decided with the 2 tracks, Boco, order one of their Ogamas exactly to my specs. That should be pretty exciting. There's something really special about when you spend enough time with one of these traditional bows, how it feels like such an extension of yourself. The Bear Montana doesn't shoot anywhere near as fast as the Black Hunter that I picked up. It is way slower, but I can guarantee you throw a tennis ball anywhere out to 25 yards in the yard, and I guarantee that I'm going to be at least within an inch of it when I shoot it with the Montana.
The little that I have done so far with my bow and the shooting I've done, I am extremely excited for this fall.
Yep.
I can't wait. October 1st, I'm getting out there.
Yep.
Well, even before that, for early doe, I'll head out to the farm. I cannot wait. And I haven't been this excited for a deer season. I've been excited for them just because you get to hunt again.
Yep.
But it's different, and it's one of those things that you can't explain.
Yep.
It's just different.
Yep. And it's not a feeling like you're going out there and, you're going out there and you're shooting a bigger, wider spread on your, your target, and you're hoping that you're able to connect on one. It's like you can get so accurate and you're not shooting sights. You're letting your brain make the connection, and, by practicing enough, it's incredible how your brain can make that connection, how accurate you really can be. You have a stick, a string, and your arrow. But as far as the actual hunting tactic goes, my main thing that I learned this past season, when picking a spot, you generally have an idea of which way the deer are coming and going. And it has happened so much this past season and in previous seasons, but it stands out more with the traditional gear. If you expect a deer to be coming, say, north to south, and so you're trying to set up to give yourself better cover from where the deer are coming from, so that when you do notice them coming, you're more protected, with the cover, and then giving yourself an opportunity to draw while in concealment until they're slightly coming past you. I like setting up that way so that the deer doesn't have a chance to see you until it's already slightly walking past you. It's just a really good, it opens up their vitals for slight quartering away, and you can get away with a little bit more if they catch you on the draw. I didn't pay as much attention in some of these spots to how much cover or concealment I had in the side that I didn't expect them to come from. It seems that every time that I don't worry about the weak side where I don't expect the deer to come from, that's where they come from. And then you're pinned. You are completely wide open. You put all your eggs in a basket, having cover on your other side, and, trying to go out and put one more deer down this past season, just to kind of seal off the season. I had deer coming regularly on camera north to south, and I had great cover behind this tree and some brush that was from the north, and it was going to be just perfect setup. They were going to cross a trail that, was 14 yards in front of me, and all of a sudden I hear a noise and I look back and I have a doe coming from the south, and this doe is basically, I'm just wide open, sitting, in a flannel with my longbow on the ground, nothing between me and her besides a few little scrubby saplings, and I couldn't do anything. That doe walked right to me, and at 4 yards, what do you do? At 4 yards, it was just me and her. I can't draw. I just had to just try to be as still as I could, hoping she wouldn't, catch me, shaking. And so hopefully as she starts walking away, I can make a quick draw and send it. If I would have had a little bit of cover between me and her and had some sort of break between me and her, I could have at least used that opportunity to make the draw. So when she stepped out, it was done.
What are some things that you have learned starting doing this traditional archery?
I would say when I was first starting, it can be pretty intimidating to people to, try to switch from compound. There's a lot of good videos.
Which I agree with that, because the first time that with this black hunter, me flinging an arrow, I was like, what do I do? I'm like, I had no reference of aiming, because I'm used to just putting a pin where I want the arrow to go.
Yep. There's a lot of good videos you can reference on YouTube for, the learning curve and different styles of shooting. What really helped me in the beginning, because it is intimidating and it's hard to be consistent. It's hard to be consistent, just starting out, just trying to shoot instinctive, because it takes years and years and shooting nearly every day to develop a very accurate, instinctive shot, to one that you feel
different yardages.
Yeah. I mean, even close. It's
I'll tell
your brain really, at least to the point that you would feel confident. Like you can go down. You can go outside for a couple weeks, and if you've never tried this before, and you go out and you start flinging arrows, and you get to the point you're holding a pretty good group at 15 yards. Are you going to be confident enough that you could take that bow? Like, how long would it take you to do that, having no reference of sights, anything, before you'd feel confident to take that on a destination hunt and be confident that in the moment of truth, you're not going to fall apart? One thing that messed with my head when I was first starting was, even if I could shoot accurately, having some sort of fallback, so that if I got caught up in the moment, the adrenaline's flowing, you're not thinking clearly, having some sort of process that you can follow, some sort of reference, as a fail-safe, at least to check yourself, because there's times that you shoot, you'll go shoot in the beginning, and you might have been shooting good the last time you went, and all of a sudden you go out to shoot, and something just doesn't feel right. You're doing something different. You can't figure it out. Something just feels different. How you're, maybe how you're hooking the string, how you're gripping the grip. Maybe your anchor's just slightly off, or your alignment's off, or your shoulders are closed a little, and so you're short drawing. Something feels different. How do you know? So for me in the beginning, what was super helpful, coming from compound, was two things. Starting off gap shooting, which is having a consistent anchor no matter what, but using the tip of your arrow as an aiming reference for different yardages. That was a huge help, and I know a lot of compound guys have an easier switch doing that. I personally got really used to a point on distance, which is right where the tip of the arrow is going to impact at that exact spot. I like to have that.
When you draw back and you see the tip of the arrow.
Very tip. Yep.
Very tip. And when you release,
it's going to hit at that yardage. which for me, I got really used to having that at about 23 to 25 yards. So that I knew that if there was a target at 23, 25 yards, that if the tip of the arrow was on that spot on my release, the arrow would impact that spot. Using the gap shooting was a fallback for me. In the beginning, it was easier to get quick accuracy. And another thing that helped me right in the beginning was the use of a draw clicker. I didn't use it the way a lot of people use it. A lot of people use it as, you get to draw, and as you expand, or you set the clicker so that it will click once you fully expand through your shot to full draw. And as soon as it clicks, it's a psycho trigger, and so that you don't have target panic and you have a cleaner release. It did not work for me in that sense. I used it as a draw check to make sure that I was coming to full draw, a consistent draw every time, because when you first start shooting, your muscles will fatigue quicker, and since your form is not consistent yet, you might not realize that you might be short drawing, and that will change everything. It will change, your arrows will be out of tune. So little left, right, you're not drawing the bow as far, so your trajectory will be off. And if you're trying to use an aiming reference like gap shooting, having a consistent draw length makes a huge difference. So I used that for the first year, and I put a little piece of electrical tape under it, so it wasn't really a click. It was more that I felt a little tap in the bow when I would get to full draw. It would snap, but I would just feel a little tick
So you
in
don't
my
have to
hand.
go any further or
Yep, and you're there.
less.
And you're there. It's as soon as you come back, get there, all of a sudden, if you don't hear it yet, or you don't feel it yet, you know that you're not there, and maybe your posture is poor, you're closed off, and you just know, push a little more, and you get there, and now you know that you're in the correct, the correct draw length and how you've been practicing, and the bow is going to shoot how you've been practicing. That was the best thing for me in the beginning, was gap shooting and the use of a clicker, just to make sure that I was having consistent form until it became ingrained. I kept it on until this past summer, and I started to focus more on the clicker than my shot, and I realized that I hit a point where I didn't need it anymore, and I took it off, and I started focusing more on all the other aspects of my shot that needed to be focused on during the shot. And my draw length is consistent at this point, and I could focus on a cleaner release, better back tension, everything else. And I started shooting even better.
I'm not trying to do any kind of fixed crawl, point on, none of that.
Yep. And now see, and there's two sides, because I see it a lot where guys are talking about how they were an instinctive shooter for years, and maybe they have really good days, but then they have their off days, and they can't explain why they're just not hitting their spot. And their groups open up, they just can't shoot that day. Or life happens and they go through periods where they can't shoot as often, and they lose that finesse that they had with that system. And a lot of guys do end up investigating the gap shooting end of it to lose those real off days, where they lost their feel that day, or they just have an off day.
So it's like a fail safe. They go back to
and that's
a gap.
That's exactly. And honestly, there is a reason that Olympic shooters, if they're shooting like bare bow with no sights, whatever, there's a reason that those guys are gap shooters or string walkers, where they're using the arrow as an aiming reference. Now, me personally, I don't I don't think that I don't think there's a right and a wrong way, obviously, because there's some phenomenal instinctive shooters out there. But I know that for me, when I am going into the woods, if I have any doubt about something on crap, how did I need to, how did I need to hold that bow? What if I draw back and my bow doesn't feel right in my hand on this? Do I have any idea how to make this shot happen? Just because it's new, it's a weird feel, knowing that right now that I don't think about my gaps when I'm actually shooting. Once I get out to distance, I might reference it because it starts getting very, very tight, trajectory wise. But inside, 20 yards and in, I don't think about a gap. Prior to season, I do try to pay attention and try to figure out what the gap is while I'm shooting, so that if I'm out in the field, I can always say, and
It's
even
almost
if
like
it
making
feels,
like a mental note.
yeah, even
that
if
you
it
can look
feels,
back on.
even if it feels something just doesn't feel 100% or whatever, if I start, my thoughts just black out. I lose all my thoughts in my head, and I'm not thinking right, and I'm whatever. I know that I have an 8-inch gap at 15 yards. So if I just completely blank out of everything I've been doing, I know that off the
You
tip
look
of that
up from your
arrow,
phone,
I can
and
go.
then there's a deer
Yes.
standing right there.
I know that I can. I know that my gap is 8 inches at 15 yards if I needed it, and so I don't have that doubt. There are times where I've gone out and practiced, and I just my release, I just was struggling with my release, and I was having maybe an inconsistent night. I wouldn't hunt the next day because there was a doubt in my mind, and I can't go into the woods and have any doubt creeping in, because it will affect how I'm going to shoot, or even just how I'm going to hunt. My thoughts with everything. I want to have that confidence that when a deer comes in, it's going to be a bad day for that deer because I'm going to hit my spot.